morning. I'm one of Ian's PhD students, Craig Nevill-Manning. I want to apologize to the amazing Trust Waikato Symphony Orchestra for editing down the symphony down to just the pieces that Ian was playing in, but I hope you'll understand. So I'd like to welcome Ian's family and friends and colleagues, both here in Hamilton and also on the live stream around the world. We're here today to celebrate a remarkable person who touched our lives in profound ways. This is a sad time because Ian is no longer with us, but it's also a great time to share with each other the things that we loved about Ian, and that's exactly what we're here for Ian's Big Bash. We're going to hear from Ian's friends and his family and his colleagues from around the world, interspersed with some videos of Ian's passions, especially music. And as I said, we just heard from Ian soloing in Rhapsody in Blue, played by the Trust Waikato Symphony Orchestra, and you'll hear from some of the members of the orchestra a little later on. So Ian had a number of passions, as you know. I've got pictures to demonstrate, hopefully. So, of course, family was his huge passion. And we've got lots of members of his family here from multiple generations. And family and more family. Some of these family have grown up since the photos were taken. But music was another huge passion of his. He played music all over the place. Here Ian is in Fiji playing the clarinet under the coconuts, and of course on a boat, combining some of his passions. And you also hear from the guy in behind Ian there. He played under the most trying of circumstances. Here he is in his home where he spent the last days of his life. Sailing, of course, was another huge passion of Ian's, and sailing and sailing and sailing. And computer science, of course, for which he received both international awards and national awards. And we'll find out a little bit more about this world-class New Zealand award a little later. Hiking was something he loved to do, and many, many exotic places around the world. And then, of course, cocktails. So cocktails of all different flavors and kinds. And after a few cocktails, always great to have a cup of coffee. Coffee was another one of his passions. But I have to say, one of his biggest passions was figuring out under what circumstances he could push the boundaries on wearing Teva sandals for ribbon cuttings and relaxing in foreign countries, playing music. But you know, when he was getting his photograph taken with the Prime Minister, it turns out he's willing to put on shoes. But back to sandals as soon as possible. Here he is, here he is, here he is. And of course, at a wedding, perfect time for a pair of Teva sandals. So it's not an exaggeration to say that for Kirsten, my wife, and I, meeting Ian, Pam, and the family was a turning point in our lives. Working with a world-class academic, getting to spend some time actually in Calgary, and learning what it is to do great research really set us up for a number of amazing opportunities ever since. And we're incredibly grateful to Ian and the whole family for that. I learned so many things from Ian. I feel like that sentence gets said a lot at funerals, but it's really, really true. But I'm just going to pick out one thing that I really treasure from my experience with him, and that is his optimism. One of the biggest things I'll remember specifically is his laugh, as I suspect you all do. There's a story he once told. Some of you may remember the details better, but he was visiting a university in Germany after an absence of a decade or so. And as he stepped in, he let out one of his uproarious laughs, and an academic popped out his head out and said, "Hey, Professor Dr. Witten, I knew it was you." But that laugh was a sign of Ian's optimism. Ian combined a huge intelligence with incredibly hard work. But also with a belief that things would work out and that really nothing should take longer than a weekend. That's more like the voice in my head. I actually learned this in particular the first time I met Ian and Pam and Anna and Witten in Calgary. And actually Tim Bell was there as well. We'd stopped in, I got to sleep on the sofa in the basement in the Calgary house, which is itself sort of motivating to get stuff done quickly. But we basically developed at that time a new approach to indexing text and compressing the text that led to, with Ian's optimism and his ambition for doing great things, led to some of the key techniques between search engines. And then, of course, a similar optimism and enthusiasm around machine learning, predated by about 30 years, the time when artificial intelligence would become a household word for all of us. His generosity with his time is just unbelievable. I can't believe how much time he spent with us, but also with all the other grad students and friends and family. It really astonished us and made Kirsten and I want to pass that on. I think it demonstrated how much he loved us along with so many other people, and still inspires us to pass on that love. I could say a lot more, but I'm going to stop. We've got a lot of people, amazing people to hear from. So let me introduce next Mark Appley, who is one of Ian's long-term colleagues here at the Computer Science Department. Mark.
Good morning, all. I've known Ian as a friend and colleague for almost 30 years. He came to Waikato while I was based at Massey University, but my return here to Waikato soon afterwards can in some ways be attributed to his arrival in New Zealand and the tremendous impact his academic talents and personal attributes had on the computer science discipline, certainly here at Waikato, but also across the whole of New Zealand. Today, I'm speaking mainly of his contributions to the university and the discipline of computer science. His many other attributes will be addressed by others. Strong characteristics of Ian's which contributed to his impact on computer science were his research strengths, his belief in the power of collaboration, his understanding of the importance of team building and the development of focused research groups, and his zeal and talent for attracting students and building their interest in research. He consciously maintained we should involve our senior and experienced staff in first-year teaching, carrying this through to offering interesting courses and projects at later years, and actively encouraging students into research. Ian brought these concepts to the department at Waikato, but also promoted inter-university cooperation across the country through student research conferences and staff collaboration. Ian's efforts built this outstanding research profile for the Waikato department, not only making it the top computing department in the country in the National Research Assessment Exercise of 2006, but also helping to establish the profile of computer science as a serious research discipline across New Zealand, something from which all of the universities have now benefited. For me, as head of department and later dean, Ian provided support, inspiration, and guidance, as well as friendship. Because he made it clear how it could be done, with others feeling inspired, not controlled or managed in the process, the department was able to build a wide range of research groups, each drawing significant external funding, modelled totally on Ian's example and vision. He challenged, inspired, and coerced colleagues to greater expectations of each other and of their students. His model of focused collaborative research groups and of attracting quality research students through our teaching and degree programs became a basic tenet of the department. And as we all know, at the same time as facilitating, encouraging, and inspiring others, he also excelled himself with his own projects, groups, and protégés. Many of you are aware of his seminal research. Craig has just mentioned some of it. Just to point to two examples of his truly significant contributions, the Greenstone Digital Library, the Weka machine learning software, both of international significance, impact, utility, and reputation. Ian was the mastermind behind them and attracted and engaged others. So they've each had many other contributors and champions. That's how Ian worked. Thank you, Ian, for being such an inspirational colleague and friend, and my sympathy to Pam and her family. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Gemma, and I'm one of Ian's PhD students. Pam has so kindly asked me to say a few words today, both as one of Ian's PhD students, in fact his last PhD student, but also to represent all of the students that Ian has supervised over the years. I first met Ian in 2013 when I was in the second year of my undergraduate degree. I didn't come into the university straight from high school, and I didn't come in with any existing knowledge of computing. I was a 25-year-old landscape designer who decided to make a career change. I'm sure you can imagine what it was like for a 25-year-old female to come and study a Bachelor of Computing and Mathematical Sciences. But when I met Ian, he saw me. He's the first person that I remember seeing me in academia. He saw my potential and he saw what I could be and what I could do. From second year through to only a week ago, he has always encouraged me to strive for more, to push myself, to get out of my comfort zone, to work hard, and most of all, to enjoy life. I'm trying to keep this short and sweet, but when I think of Ian, there are two things that I think of, and I think it's important to mention both. The first is the passion and the strength and the drive that he instilled in his students. I think it's safe to say, and I think all of Ian's students would agree with me, that Ian made an impact on every one of us and all in different ways. We are also incredibly lucky to have had him in our lives and to learn what we have from him. The second thing that I think of when I think of Ian is the incredibly helpful but intensely soul-crushing experience of having your writing proofread by the Ian Whitted. I won't go into any detail, but let's just say that the first time that Ian proofed my writing, I couldn't see any of my original text under his red corrections. And in fact, that was the case for the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth time as well. But Ian's red pen and his writing rules, e.g. don't include meaningless crap, served me well. They're things that I think about every time that I write, what I wouldn't give to have Ian and his red pen reading over this for me today. Ian, from all of your students, thank you. Thank you for your red pen. Thank you for your writing rules. Thank you for your laugh echoing around the corridors. Thank you for your full belief in our abilities, for your unwavering encouragement, and for all of the lessons that you have taught us. Thank you.
Sit by my side, come as close as the air, share in a memory of gray, and wander in my words, dream about the pictures that I play of changes, green leaves of summer turn red in the fall, to brown and to yellow they fade, and then they have to die, trapped within the circle time parade of changes. Scenes of my young years were warm in my mind, visions of shadows that shine, till one day I returned and found they were the victims of the vines of changes. The world spinning madly, it drifts in the dark, swings through a hollow of haze, a race around the stars, a journey through the universe ablaze with changes.
Hello, I'm Gillian, and this is apologies aside, and this is Wendy. She's my friend, and we both belong to the Hamilton Gardens sketching group. Now we've got lots of memories of Ian, so I'm going to get Wendy to read them out to you.
Well, most of you may not be aware that Ian had other interests apart from computers, sailing his yacht, playing the clarinet, hiking, but he was hugely interested in sketching. For 8 years, a small group of us have met each week at the Hamilton Gardens to sketch, and Ian was a much valued member of this group. Rain, hail, shine, and freezing temperatures have never deterred us from turning up, and Ian always arrived on his push bike, wearing his sandals, with socks in winter, much to the disapproval of one member. He was always full of cheer after a 10K ride along very busy roads from Martangi. The gardens are a wonderful venue for sketching, and every area and nook and cranny have been captured in our sketchbooks. Ian never had a preference of where to go. Near the information centre, where the decision was always made, he was quite happy to follow the flow, except we knew he was not a fan of drawing flowers. Off to the rose garden slowed his pace considerably, and time spent in the English garden was a sort of torture, but up the hill to do the daffodils in springtime was acceptable, even if you had to be careful not to fall off your stool on the steep slope. But placed in front of a stately statue in the Italian, a reclining lion in the Chinese, a pile of rocks or the various buildings had him opening his sketchbook with glee, and they were soon depicted on his page in a bold manner. But no matter the subject, it was the companionship that surrounded a group of like-minded people that Ian loved. Sitting on our stools, discussing each other's problems of what pencil to use, whether watercolour was best to describe the bark on a bare tree, and wonderment when watching another member, Lewis, who appeared to be scribbling, but ended up with a masterpiece, and every Monday was different. As you know, Ian frequently travelled and never forgot to pack his tiny moleskin sketchbook in his bag. The resulting sketches were regularly dispatched back to our group, and when viewing them over our coffees, we travelled all around the world, looking at castles and ruins, old houses and statues, various people, some playing instruments, and lighthouses, but of course, no flowers. In fact, many lighthouses, as a visit to Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia had them popping up around almost every corner. I first met Ian through the excellent sketches he was sending back while on one of his epic holidays. What we will most remember about Ian is the fun we had with him and his laugh, which exceeded the volume of what most of us could produce, and the serious talks we had about politics and world events while having our coffees. And it was lovely that Pam used to go walking around the gardens and used to join us for coffee, and we always enjoyed it when Pam came along as well. He is a great loss to our group and will be forever missed.
Thank you, Gillian and Wendy. Greetings, Pam and family. My name's Sarah Sheaf, and Ian and I were best clarinet buddies for nearly 30 years. We were introduced in 1994 by the then CMS school manager, wonderful woman called Rebecca Hasman-Judd, who told me about this amazing professor of computing who was also a demon clarinet player, and he just lived for music. I'd come to Hamilton newly to a job in the English department, and I still had a fairly busy clarinet playing life back in Auckland, so I grabbed the chance for Hamilton music with both hands. Ian and I started off playing duets together, and then he brought along his good friends, Murray Johnston and Paul King, and we had years of fun as a clarinet quartet. We met every single week, eating together, and then playing and laughing and playing some more until one or other of us, but never Ian, decided that we couldn't play another note. We had wonderful clarinet weekends together, sometimes at Pam and Ian's place at Martangi, sometimes at our place in Epsom, and sometimes gloriously at Craig and Kirsten's place at Woodside Bay on Waiheke. Pam and Ian opened their home to a whole stream of clarinetists over the years. Some people who would have loved to have been here today: Nathaniel Smorty, now in Australia, Stephanie Pixton, Rasmus Orfskov, Ashley Hopkins, Ian Parsons and Murray, who left us sadly far too early. As our numbers dwindled, Ian and I kept at it, duets every single week until last November, and also until last November, we made a handy little clarinet section in the TWSO. But come November, Ian had started to feel a little bit mouldy on it, a bit breathless, getting uncharacteristically tired. It was his extraordinary strength of character and purpose that got him through the orchestra's end-of-year concert at the end of last year. Huge program, Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto and Beethoven's Sixth Symphony. Then he discovered what was at the bottom of the breathlessness, and it was time to move on to the next phase. Together, we packed up his huge library of clarinet ensemble music and sent it over to Nathaniel in Australia, along with the index that Ian had compiled over the years, which came complete with helpful comments on the works that we'd played together. Some comments. Paul says he'd rather be doing his taxes. Or, next time, try this one without martinis. Or this one of a rather misguided arrangement of some Schoenberg. Truly awful. Only keep this one for posterity. Once in a lifetime is too often. Ian paid good money in American dollars. Pam tells me that Ian asked that the score of Headwind accompany Ian on his last journey. It couldn't have been a more fitting choice. Ian faced what needed to be faced, and right until the last grasped every opportunity for family, for music, and for fun. I think we all send him on his way with much, much gratitude and all the love in the world.
How do we even begin to celebrate Ian when there is so much to celebrate? You all know about his outstanding personality, his kindness and generosity, the respect he always shows others, his warmth, his family values, his curiosity and love of exploring new things, his infectious sense of humor, and the joy he has brought to so many of us.
We've known Ian for 40 years and have so many connections and shared stories that we feel like we've become part of Ian and Pam's family. So we can only hint at a few recollections that illustrate the richness of who Ian was and what he meant to us.
I first met Ian when I was a pretty clueless computer science student thinking about grad school. Well, Ian took me under his wing and he mentored me into the person I am today, for good or bad. He showed me what it means to be a professional academic by his careful guidance when needed while still providing space to grow into my own path. He taught me how to communicate through writing and publishing, where we spent many hours massaging the drivel I produced into something coherent and thoughtful. That's something that I and my fellow grad students called the Witten filter. But he led mostly by example through the way he treated me, my fellow students, his colleagues, his collaborators, and his family.
And while Saul was at grad school, we got to know the rest of the Witten family, Pam, and at the time, very young Anna and Nikki. They warmly welcomed us into their home and lives. We saw the way they raised their family, which inspired us to start our own and became the model for how we raised our children.
We shared so many adventures with the Wittens over the years. The Department of Plays, where he broke the mold of what it means to be a nerdy computer scientist. The many days of picnics, cycling, hiking, and skiing in the Canadian Rockies. Even ice climbing, where he bravely followed me and fellow Prof. Brian Wyville at Professor Falls. The sailing trips, where he gamely put up with us landlubbers.
Well, Pam so generously looked after our kids while we ventured off.
Yeah.
And living with the Wittens in their home for a several-month New Zealand sabbatical. The music, though Saul never did get to be anywhere near as good as Ian.
Not even close.
And the biannual visits to share in the music and camaraderie of the Canmore Folk Festival.
We could keep on going for hours. But it's fair to say that we both learned how to live our lives more fully and joyfully because of Ian. The fact that we're sending this while on an extended road trip reflects how we continue to follow in Ian and Pam's footsteps. Pam, Nikki, Anna, your extended family. We've all been blessed with having Ian in our lives. We will miss Ian deeply, although that laugh, that laugh will resonate forever.
Hi, my name is Tony, and I am a martini. We're here to celebrate the life of another martini. Some might even say the father of all martinis in a way, the incomparable master mixer himself, Ian Whitten. It's also true that many of you out there seated in this hall and watching from online, you're also martinis. Because being a martini is, in large part, what brought us all here together today. Now, the origins of the martinis can be traced back to an earlier band. Sometime around 1994, when I, Craig Nevill-Manning, and Ian, we joined together as a mop-top group of unpolished tea room musicians who would ultimately become the legends of hotel lobby jazz standards that we are not known as today. Now, many people ask me, how did this band come together? Well, in truth, nobody asks me that. Usually what they ask is a little more like, what made you guys think you should be a band? And that turns out is an interesting story. Well, again, perhaps not interesting per se, but I'm going to tell it anyway. You see, I first met Ian at the University of Calgary in June of 1988. After my third year of undergrad studies, when I optimistically, in a state of delusion probably, knocked on his office door and asked for a summer job. Miraculously, I got one. I was writing Emacs Lisp code to convert TROF bibliographies into BibTeX ones. Now, that's terminology which you probably won't make sense to anyone who isn't a jazz musician, but the rest few will get it. Now, I didn't do a particularly good job with the assignments that assignment Ian gave me, but I did discover a way to get in Ian's good graces another way. You see, I had a band, an R&B band. And somehow it came to pass that the computer science department at Calgary would occasionally bring my band in to do things like Christmas parties and retirement events. And it had also come to pass that I found Ian had been a saxophone player for a club band in Britain back in the 60s or 70s or whatever it was. And so at one of the department gigs, we got Ian to come and sit in with us, which to my surprise came with a clarinet rather than a saxophone, but no matter, we had a blast. We had a blast. That was, as it turns out, the first important ingredient to being a martini. Have fun making music. Indeed, have fun whatever you're doing. Now, back on the academic side of things, I cajoled Ian into supervising my daft idea for an honors project, one where penguins and polar bears would play spy versus spy on Arctic ice floes as grist for computer-generated stories. And now this may seem unrelated to the music, except that after my honors degree and with Ian's encouragement, I wrote my first paper on that topic, and I presented it at a conference in a little city in Westphalia, Germany, a town called Siegen. And at that same conference, I met for the first time none other than my future bandmate, Craig Nevill, and his supervisor, musician, Tim Bell, who I got to jam with later on as well. Both from all places, New Zealand. Who knew that in a few short years, we'd all be in New Zealand, jamming together, having fun? Well, of course, Craig and Tim knew they'd probably be back here because they lived here, but I didn't know it wouldn't be long before I was heading there myself. Now, I'd subsequently convinced Ian to supervise me in a master's program that I took so long to finish that Ian had migrated to New Zealand with his family before I was done. And his family kindly let me, he kindly flew me down to the Waikato, my first time to New Zealand, and his family kindly let me move in with them for a while as I tried to finish my thesis. It was terrific experience. Thank you so much. Any of you who've had the pleasure of staying with the Whittons, you'll hear it many times. I know there's an awful lot of you. Well, you start to feel like one of the family pretty quickly. I think perhaps even Anna and Nikki started to wonder if they were still part of the family because there's so many others coming and going, living in the house. Anyway, it was such a great experience for me that after I went back to Canada and graduated, my wife and we decided to move to New Zealand, ride on the coattails of the Whittons, keep the dream alive in a doctorate. So we arrived in '93. To my surprise, it was Craig, now married and a Manning. He'd come up from Canterbury to do a doctorate with Ian, and it wasn't long before Craig, Ian, and I were starting to jam together. For whatever reason, I don't know, we decided we'd all become jazz musicians. Go figure. It was great fun. And one of the hallmarks of jazz is, of course, not just improvising with melodies and chords, but also with timing. It's expected that good jazz players will employ subtle rhythmic manipulations, playing off beat, changing the time signature, syncopating in the extreme, and then magically bringing it all back together on time and on beat for the finish. And one of the hallmarks of our jazz was getting so offbeat that our songs would typically end with three of us in three different places. We were so good at this that by the time we started getting a few gigs, we'd taken on the name rubato. It's an Italian musical term, which in our case means no ability whatsoever to keep time as a band. I should say it probably wasn't any one of us in particular, but rather it was just a special kind of magic that happened as a band. We were soon joined by another academic who's both a philosopher and a bona fide jazz guitarist, Gary Kemp. Hope you're watching online, Gary. He taught us a lot, made us seem legit. He could carry us all. Almost managed to keep the three of us sufficiently in time. We actually started to get gigs at the Odd Cafe and Bar. Alas, after a few years, Gary moved off to Great Britain, and rubato carried on in various forms with other musicians like Carolyn Smith and vocals and Mark Stavely on drums. He occasionally even played the Irish bodhran, is it called, the big handheld drum. So many people, I have trouble recalling them all. Ian's brother Brian was in the mix as well on trombone whenever he was in the country. It was great. At some point, Craig finished his PhD. He too left the country. But as fate would have it, another colleague joined the department who happened to play piano, Mark Utting, who shared our enthusiasm for finishing jazz standards in three different places. So we spent some years together, this time as the Ian Whitten Trio. But of course, after time, Mark also moved overseas. Seems that to be a genuine martini, he must also be a cosmopolitan. Thank you. Last page. Soon after, there followed a couple of key moments in the band's development. Now, the first big thing was that we were joined by a wonderful opera singer of all things, the lovely Evelyn Borton, who was keen to try and take up jazz vocals, along with her exceedingly talented accompanist Anya, a gifted, well-trained musician, composer, you wouldn't believe, had no trouble playing anything at all in any style. Now, with Evelyn came perhaps the most fundamental development of all. We began to increase the number and duration of our set breaks during practice and the octane levels of those interludes. That is, Ian had started to perfect what was to become another of his legendary skills, mixing martinis. And what we noticed was how much better we sounded after one of his cocktails. And how much better still after two. And moreover, anyone who would, drop in and came to listen, partake in the refreshment breaks, they also noticed how much better we sounded after they'd had a few drinks. And so it was, born out of these empty cocktail glasses and naked toothpicks, the band was reborn under its new moniker, the Martinis. The Martinis had some limited success in clubs, garden parties, and cafes. But alas, after time, Evelyn also moved overseas, and Anya had already moved to Wellington. We continued modestly for a while and practiced only, mostly as a duo, Ian and Tone. Well, and the gin and the olives. Until this is the last page. Until yet another moment of good fortune, and a new musician colleague joined the university, Alistair Swale, on guitar and bass. And the Martinis were reborn, and now with the occasional klezmer music, just to mix it up a little. And Alistair's son, Alexander, a legit symphony bassist. He also joined with us whenever he was in town. His wife, Yurka, also from time to time, and on the drum. In fact, one might say that it is the signature of the Martinis that anyone who's in the building has a song in their heart and a dirty vodka martini in their hand is a martini. The recipe for the music was like the recipe for the martini itself, perfect in its imperfection. It is something to have fun with, to share, to enjoy. And man, did Ian ever enjoy those recipes. He showed us that to be a martini is just to be joyful. So thanks, Ian, for all the martinis, for all the tunes, all the people, all the perfect mistakes, and all the laughs, and all the laughs, and all the laughs.
And our winner is a leading computer science professor whose work has helped establish New Zealand as an international leader in the provision of digital library software. The Greenstone digital library software, which he helped develop, organises information for the internet or packs vast amounts of data onto special CD-ROMs. The software is used by the BBC, New York Botanical Gardens, and by UNESCO in more than 60 countries to collate information for disaster relief operations, to combat AIDS, and for economic development. In New Zealand, Greenstone's collaboration with the Alexander Turnbull Library has produced a huge collection of online Māori documents used by Māori for legal and linguistic research. Our winner also helped to develop the landmark Weka system for analysing and establishing relationships from large data sets using an ordinary computer. He's a well-respected author with many published papers and books, including How to Build a Digital Library, Data Mining and Web Dragons, and Managing Gigabytes, regarded as the definitive textbook on data compression and information retrieval. Murray, will you please tell us the name of the winner?
I'm delighted on behalf of the Foundation for Research, Science and Technology to present the Research, Science, Technology and Academia 2010 World Class New Zealand Award to Professor Ian Whitten.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Before I get any further, and my accent gives me away, Perhaps I'm too late already. I got to fess up here, and unlike most of you here, I was not lucky enough to be born in this country. Before I could live here, I had to find it first, which is not easy for a boy from a small, remote corner of the Northern Hemisphere. Anyway, I got here, and it's proved, a little bit surprisingly perhaps, to be a wonderful basis for an international research career. It's been so good for my career to have moved here. I came here about 20 years ago from Calgary in Western Canada. I had to drag along my wife and kids. They weren't very keen. My wife and one of my daughters is here tonight. I'd like to thank them for sticking it out. It was kind of easy for me and not so easy for them. And I'm a little bit worried that it's not going to be easy now for Pam, my wife, to live with a certified tall poppy. Can you imagine? What's that going to be like? Anyway, so thank you very much, Pam and Nikki. I came to Waikato University, and I've been there ever since. And again, it was a wonderful decision. It's been a fabulous sort of environment for me to develop in the ways that I wanted to develop. And I'd like to pay tribute to all of the people there who have helped me on my way, particularly the present Vice-Chancellor, who's here tonight, Roy, who actually incidentally followed me across from the Emerald Isle to live in New Zealand himself. And I'd particularly like to acknowledge my long-time department head and dean, Mark Apperley, who has been a rock throughout my time here. My research has been generously funded by the Foundation for Research, Science and Technology and the Marsden Fund. It's pretty amazing, really. Not only did they fund the research that enables me to stand here today, but they're funding this award, and I hear they're even buying my dinner tonight. So really, thanks, guys. It should really be the other way around. Anyway, so the kind of work that I do is largely philanthropic in nature, actually. We have this a number of pieces of research software, including some digital library software that's used throughout the world, and in particular throughout the developing world in countries from Afghanistan, Armenia, Australia, oh no, sorry, not Australia, Vietnam, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, places like that. And this, the aim of this software is to empower people to create their own information collections. It's about empowerment rather than gifting. And it's done very well. And one reason we've done very well is we've had huge support from UNESCO in Paris, who we kind of partnered with about 10 or 11 years ago. They've been great. And we've had a lot of international funding for this kind of outreach part of our research from the US foundations like the Mellon Foundation and the Koha Foundation in New York, which actually belongs to two people who are in this room tonight. They know who they are. Thank you very much. Koha has funded work in Southern Africa, in Zimbabwe and Malawi and Namibia and Lesotho and Tanzania, places like that. But the brains behind this software belong to my graduate students, research staff and colleagues on the project. It's certainly not me who writes this stuff. It's great being a professor. Your students do all your work for you. It's just absolutely fantastic. And they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. So I would like to declare that good Kiwi PhD students surpass expectations anywhere in the world. They can hold their heads up high in the most elite universities and research establishments. Many of them travel to conferences, get best paper awards at international conferences. These guys who are back in the lab right now working away, I hope. They're the real world-class New Zealanders. They're the next generation of world-class New Zealanders. And I take my hat off to them, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart.
And thanks to the Foundation for Research, Science and Technology for sponsoring that award. And congratulations again, Professor Ian Whitten, winner of the 2010 World Class New Zealand Research, Science and Technology and Academia Award and most comprehensive thanking speech of the night.
So I'm reading a message on behalf of Rupert de Cruz, who is the musical director and conductor of the Trust Waikato Symphony Orchestra. Ian was an enthusiastic clarinetist with the Trust Waikato Symphony Orchestra for very many years. When I first started conducting the orchestra, due to his regular travels abroad, he was only able to play less frequently. But in the more recent years, he took part in an increasing number of programs. He told me on many occasions how important being a member of TWSO was for him and how much he enjoyed rehearsals. As well as playing in TWSO, Ian was for a time on the board of the Waikato Orchestral Society and made a significant contribution in that capacity by successfully raising funds for the orchestra. Ian's last performance with TWSO was in November 2022. Even though he was unwell, he remained determined to play. I remember talking to him privately just before the concert when he told me that he was going to be seeing his doctor in a few days' time, and in his inimitable direct fashion, that he did not expect to receive good news. He went on to put his all into the subsequent performance a few minutes later, which understandably left him totally exhausted. Of course, you always knew that where he was around at rehearsals, not just by the sound of his laughing, but also, of course, I was playing, but also, of course, that incredible laugh. We shall all miss his irrepressible good nature, boundless energy, and total commitment to TWSO.
My name is Elsie Kane, and I've been a Trust Waikato Symphony Orchestra member for many, many years playing the flute. A big smile, a huge laugh, and a wonderful Irish accent heralded in a new clarinetist to play with the TWSO 30 years ago. Ian had arrived. As we settled in to begin our first rehearsal, from behind me, I heard an enthusiastic clarinetist playing in a jazz style. Vibrato. We did have a little chat about this when rehearsal finished. Ian, I said, I love the sound, but for an orchestral woodwind section, you might like to lose some of the vibrato. Ian went home to practice long, straight notes, and he came back a week later with no vibrato evident. I'm sure he had no trouble finding it again when he played with his jazz buddies. He settled in alongside Murray Johnson, and together they made a great team for many years. Being a perfectionist, Ian was rather nervous about taking over as first clarinetist when the time came, but always well prepared and practiced, he played his solos beautifully. One of many memorable occasions was in Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue with the well-known clarinet introduction. Despite some ill health, he remained determined to play, and his final performance with the TWSO was in November last year, which included the Pastoral Symphony, particularly demanding for a clarinetist. He played his part beautifully. When Ian retired from university, he found he had more time on his hands, and about 3 years ago, when my Year 13 clarinet players at Dio left school, I found I had no first clarinets in the orchestra. I jokingly said to him, "Can you come and play clarinet with the Dio Orchestra?" His immediate response was, "Sure." So on a Wednesday afternoon, Ian hopped on his bike and made his way from Matangi to Dio with his number 2 clarinet, just in case of any mishaps on the way, to practice with us. I was a little embarrassed on the first day because the girls were so chatty and excited. And his response was, "Elsie, this takes me straight back to my school days. I love it." With his signature big laugh. The orchestra went on a trip to Auckland for a KBB orchestral festival. And as it fell on a Tuesday, Pam had to be consulted first, because Tuesdays were Travelling Tuesdays in the Whitten household, with a new destination awaiting them each week. With permission granted, Ian and Pam travelled to Auckland with us. We had a great time. About 5 years ago, Ian suggested it would be good for the development of the woodwind section for leaders to get together regularly to play chamber music. I joined up with Anne Mendrin playing oboe, Murray Petrie bassoon, and of course, Ian. We would look forward to his emails to us on Wednesdays saying, "Coffee at 11 tomorrow. I'm sure looking forward to it." On one of these occasions, we met Ian's brother and sister, and we learnt a new word, crack, an Irish term for nattering, having a good time, fun experience, friendly conversation. So on Thursdays, we would arrive at Pam and Ian's house for coffee, crack, and to play together for a couple of hours. We always arrived to find our music for the day photocopied and ready to go. If the piece went well, we got to take it home to practice. If not, it was removed from our stands, never to be seen again. And this could happen sometimes after only a few bars. Ian's attention to detail, organisation and performance had its zenith with our first paid gig for the Te Amutu Rotary Club. Ian took great pride in this, and everything had to be perfect. The music was organised, timed and themed as a journey round the world, with everything from Bach to Walt Disney's Looney Tunes. The program was well received and Ian was very pleased with the performance. Ian has donated his A clarinet for use in the orchestra, and this is going to be played in the TWSO concert at the end of May by a new young player, Matthew Colvin. Ian, whenever we hear the clarinet playing some of the beautiful music you have given us, over many years, we will think of you, the many laughs we all shared, and your great love of music. You brought something very special. We will always remember fondly. Love, Elsie.
Hi, everyone. My name's Peter, and Ian was my uncle. My sincere condolences to Pam and Anna and Nikki. The world will be a different place without Ian in it, and we'll all miss him terribly. I have a couple of letters to read, written 10,000 miles away from the UK. One from Pippa, Ian's older sister, who is my mum. I don't know if there's a camera, but hi, Mum. Haven't seen her in a while. Whose words were written on the shores of Strangford Lough, where she lives, a place close to Ian's heart. The second letter is from Ian's younger brother, Brian, who visited New Zealand frequently to sail with Ian and see Pam also. So, letter from Pippa. Dear Pam, Anna and Nikki, many memories of Ian stand out for me. Sienna, Lethbridge, Waiheke, sailing to Tiri Tiri Matangi on Beulah, and watching the sun set over Auckland from the cockpit, sailing amongst the America's Cup competitors when a shroud broke and we had to stay on the same tack all the way back into Pine Harbour Marina, no mean feat. The Waikato Symphony Orchestra in Hamilton Gardens, Ian playing clarinet in the pool room, and of course, his famous cocktails. On one of Ian's many visits to Northern Ireland, he arrived at White Rock at tea time and suggested he and I immediately go out on the loch in our little boat, ebb tide. It was a beautiful summer's evening, flat calm, no wind, hardly a ripple on the water. We headed out from the mooring and motored gently around many of the islands in Strangford Lough that Ian remembered from time spent with our parents on their little boat, Panny. Dusk was falling as we picked up the mooring buoy in White Rock Bay after a lovely evening on the water. Ian loved Strangford Lough. He called it his spiritual home. I remember that evening so clearly. On another visit, Ian, Pam, and I decided to climb Slieve Donard, the highest peak in the Mourne Mountains, 2,790 feet. We left White Rock in torrential rain, visibility 0, with little hope of a walk, never mind a mountain hike. But Ian, ever the optimist in these conditions, said, carry on. Surprisingly, after a pub lunch in Newcastle at the foot of the Mourns, the skies cleared and we made it up Slieve Donard to the summit. The sense of achievement and the view from the top were our reward for carrying on. I have many happy memories of Ian, who with Pam always made our stays at Matangi so enjoyable. His nephews and nieces, Stuart, Peter, Claire, and Alex, and their families, remember their visits to New Zealand with much happiness, and his visits to White Rock for his fun, laughter, and cocktails. Love, Pippa. Second letter is from Ian's younger brother, Brian, who, as I said, visited New Zealand frequently. We'll just get that. Here we are. Roz, Michael, and I first visited New Zealand in 1995 when Ian, Pam, Anna, and Nikki made us very welcome. We have subsequently visited many times, and Ian and family have always made us feel at home. We have very happy memories of our visits and are very sad at Ian's passing, and have great sympathy for Pam, Anna, and Nikki and their families. When we visited a few years later, Ian had acquired the lovely yacht Beulah, and he and I went for a sail in her. I loved it. At the Hauraki Gulf in summer was so different from the sailing we'd done when we were kids in Northern Ireland in the 50s and 60s, where it involved cold water and lots of rain. Ian and I started going on 2-week cruises in Beulah, continuing to do so almost every year, the last time being in February 2020. Beulah was a small, just 30 feet long yacht, and conditions on board were fairly primitive, so it suited just the two of us. We spent the day sailing, then found a quiet bay to anchor in, took it in turns to cook a meal, ate and drank outside, and talked late into the night. Some years, when Roz didn't accompany me, Ian would collect me from the airport. We would drive to a supermarket to buy provisions, then to Pine Harbour Marina, and sail off to anchor in a bay of an island and spend the night there. I found that a great way to avoid jet lag. On one occasion, in the supermarket, we had one big trolley full of food and another full of drink. We decided to take one each through the checkout and then settle the bills between us. Well, it turned out the bills for each of the trolley were identical, so no settling was required. Ian always cooked on the first night, and it was always Thai chicken curry. The choice of wine to go with that was difficult, so Ian would make us a martini or two while we thought about it. He took pride in his cooking. His favorite was bacon and pancakes with maple syrup for breakfast. Delicious. Beulah could bounce around a bit in heavy seas, so all the glasses were plastic. On one memorable occasion, Ian's wine glass full with martini was sitting on the deck. A gust of wind blew it over. You can imagine Ian's reaction. In the early years, we navigated by dead reckoning with chart and compass. Ian was a dab hand with pencil and parallel rulers and spent many happy hours working out where we were and where we could get to that day. He did a brilliant job. It was only after Beulah was fitted with a GPS tracker that we ran aground. Fortunately, nothing too serious. Ian listened to the coastal weather forecast whenever possible. We sailed a long way up and down the east coast over the years, from Tarua on the Coromandel to Matai Bay on the Kari Peninsula. To do that in such a small yacht without ever having to radio the Coast Guard for help is a tribute to Ian's vigilance. Over the years, we had some great times together, including seeing whales and dolphins once at night, sparkling with bioluminescence, a magical experience. We knew that we wouldn't be able to keep on sailing together forever as we were getting older. Little did I know that he would die of cancer so soon. We had both been keen musicians throughout our lives, but I think that the only time that we played music together was in 2007, a very enjoyable occasion. And Tony, great bass playing, thanks. Ian said that he had a great life. I feel privileged to have had these experiences with him and will treasure the memories forever. Just before I hand over to the next speaker, I had some quick 3-minute thoughts of my own to share about Uncle Ian, whose achievements I have witnessed from afar for the last 47 years. My take on my Uncle Ian may be a little different from yours. No doubt Ian was a genius, but I also saw the genius behind the genius. In fact, it seems that Ian, due to his massive intellect, was actually playing a huge practical joke on the rest of us his whole life. He seemed to love watching us puzzling through life, struggling to cope with the things that he directly or indirectly influenced. That is why he laughed so hilariously all the time. He wrote several books that only he could understand. No plot line. So we all just smiled and nodded as he applied his algorithms to our lives. This included the data mining software. I really don't know what I'm talking about here. Within that amazing invention in 1981, the personal computer. Ian was instrumental in squeezing those well-known organizational items of the 1970s, such as the filofax, the telephone directory, volumes of encyclopedias and personal diaries, into a cumbersome machine that sat on and below office desks, leading to a whole range of new problems for those with an IQ lower than Ian's. For example, rooms in those days only had one electrical outlet or so. In 1984, the multiple socket extension cord was invented, forcing important, well-dressed people like CEOs to crawl around under their desks, plugging things in. This exposed their rear ends to amused secretaries and junior aides. Again, indirectly, Ian's sense of humor. Next, Ian, during his academic phase about machine learning, added complex algorithms to the software, commonly now known as updates. This caused computers around the world to briefly stop working. And the phrase, "Sorry, but my computer has crashed," became part of everyday life. This in turn led to the introduction of complex IT departments within businesses, and thus the phrase, "Have you turned it off and on again?" was coined. Ian again. As Uncle Ian was the only one in the world who could educate the masses on these complex issues, he endlessly flew around the globe, giving lectures at every university with a runway. He got so tired of answering the question, business or pleasure, at customs, that eventually he demanded his own business cabin in airplanes, and thus in the early 1990s, business class was born. Ian's doing. So as you can see, Ian's influence on all our lives is much wider and more subtle than you can imagine. And the thing is, he shared his immense knowledge with the world for free. His brain was an open source for everyone to enjoy. The man could have been a billionaire, but generously chose not to be guided by money and power. But I saw this practical joke develop early on in my observations of his amazing achievements. It was the socks and sandals that gave it away. What a great guy. I hope he continues laughing from wherever he is. And from now on, if a small change takes place in your lives, just stop to think if it might be part of Ian's hilarious cyber social experiment. Keep laughing, Ian. We'll miss you. Thank you.
A message from Greg and Carol McConnell. Dear Pam, Anna, Nikki, and friends, we are sorry not to be with you today, but are pleased to share our thoughts. I met Ian 63 years ago when we were both in second year at secondary school. Although we were not in the same class, we both loved sailing. Indeed, our common interest in sailing kept us in contact throughout our lives. At school, we sailed together on our home waters in Northern Ireland and in competitions around Ireland. We were part of the school crew which won the British Public Schools Sailing Championship in Scotland in 1961. We went our separate ways to university, Ian to Cambridge and I to Queen's in Belfast, but we came together when I did a postgrad year at Cambridge. At that time, Ian introduced me to Pam, and I quickly realized that they were perfectly matched and would be together for a long time. They married in the college chapel, and I was honored to be their best man. While Ian and Pam went to live in Canada and then New Zealand, I stayed in Northern Ireland and married Carol. Indeed, Ian and Pam happened to be in Northern Ireland at the time and joined us on our first date. As you all know, Ian and Pam traveled a lot. Every few years, they stopped off in Northern Ireland, and we were able to visit them in Hamilton in 2003. Almost every time we met up, we went sailing. On Beulah, on the Hauraki Gulf, and on our boat, Clodagh, on Strangford Lough, and around the coast and over to Scotland. Over the last 63 years, we've had a lot of fun with Ian and Pam. We have many happy memories. How could we forget Ian's infectious laugh? We particularly remember Ian playing his clarinet when sailing. For us, the highlights were him playing The Mountains of Mourne as we sailed along the County Down coast, his rendering of Mull of Kintyre as we headed for Scotland, and on a still night in a Scottish loch when Ian's clarinet music was taken up by a lone trumpeter across the water. Ian was a very successful academic, but for us, he was a lifelong friend. We shall miss him. We send our best wishes to you all, and particularly to Pam, Anna, and Nikki at this difficult time. Love, Greg and Carol.
Somewhere beyond the sea, somewhere waiting for me, my lover stands on golden sands and watches the ships that go sailing. Somewhere beyond the sea, she's there watching for me. If I could fly like birds on high, then straight to her arms I'd go sailing. It's far beyond a star, it's near beyond the moon. I know beyond a doubt my heart will lead me there soon. just as before. Happy we'll be beyond the sea, and never again I'll go sailing.
Hey everyone, my name's Jared. I'm Anna's husband of recent times. For those who didn't know, we managed to get married a couple of weeks ago while Ian was still around, so that was pretty awesome. But originally I didn't think I'd be saying anything today, as I've only really known Ian about 6 years since me and Anna have been together. So I was thinking I don't really have the classic stories that many of you guys here do have who go back decades. But we had Ian's cremation on Friday, and I started thinking that despite how sad it is, I don't get to know him more. I don't get to watch as he grows up with his grandkids. I am lucky in the fact that I'll be able to get to see his legacy live on and these amazing grandkids, Stella, Riley, and my wife, Anna. I see so much of the traits talked about today in you all. The ability to treat everyone at face value with no preconceptions or expectations is strong in all of you. Your love for music, although maybe different genres to Ian and many different genres between you, is universal and obviously something that was important in Ian's life too. As individuals, and Riley, I see your want to question everything, even the most normal, often playing devil's advocate to ensure all sides of the argument are rigorously tested. And then there is your love for art, with both of you and Ian going to a happy place with pen in hand. And then, of course, there is the shared sense of humour, the love for puns. For those of you who hadn't seen it, Riley and Ian were constantly pushing each other to find the worst pun. It was quite unpunny, really. And then Stella, I see your desire to want to be involved in everything, try it all, give everything a go. And when you find the things you like, you stick with it. You push yourself to complete the activity to the highest standard. From hip-hop dancing to netball to whānau leader. You push yourself through dedication to be at the top level. As you've heard today, something Ian also did in his endeavours. And then there is your sense of empathy, your ability to try and include everyone and make sure they're all okay. You can pick the saddest person in the room, give them a bit of attention, and change the whole atmosphere. This is something that you share with both Ian and your mum. Anna, who has this amazing skill to read the situation, does everything she can to try and make everyone happy, is something I'm sure she's picked up from her father. Anna also has the ability to consider the big picture. What is the impact of hers and others' actions? Another thing I can see coming through strongly from her dad. But as has been mentioned today, and it links into all of this, there is the laugh. Ian's laugh was amazing, and Anna's is pretty special too. She may not quite have the ferocity or the volume, but it still brings the same level of love and happiness. When the laugh is out, everyone within listening range can't help but feel happy. This laugh puts others at ease while bringing fun and happiness, something both Anna and Ian love being a part of. So I was lucky to be part of this fun and happiness for the past 6 years, but I think I've won the jackpot as I get to see the legacy continue on into the future through these awesome humans that I love. Thank you, Ian. You really were a special man with a special legacy. Thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Ian wasn't just my grandpa, but he was my friend. He guided me through tough decisions and always supported me with my dreams and aspirations.
Thank you all for coming to celebrate Ian. Over the past few months, we've had messages from so many of you, from people sharing their memories of him and the things they'll remember most. The reoccurring themes being his laugh, his larger-than-life personality, his intelligence, and his kindness. Dad joked that it was nice to know you were dying because you get to hear all the wonderful things that people say about you that you usually miss out on because they only say them at your funeral. You get the sense of humor right till the end. We were so lucky to have had Ian as a husband, a father, and a grandfather, and there are so many things that we loved about him. Here are just a few. The genuine interest in everyone and everything, also known in our family as the Spanish Inquisition, so reminiscent of Gran, his mom, where you were subjected to questions about your life that not even you had thought to ask. Never in a mean way, just genuinely curious. It's not just graduate students that Ian helped work through a difficult problem. He was always there to talk through work issues or personal challenges, and the way he asked questions always led you to greater clarity or understanding. Dad always encouraged us and gave us the confidence to do things, from moving overseas to solo backpacking and climbing Half Dome to starting a business. He gave us the confidence that we could do anything if we put our minds to it. An easy kindness. Anyone who's been cold or hungry up a mountain with Ian will know that he would unflinchingly give you the shirt off his back, or more likely one of the many, many warm items he carried just in case, or the last sandwich, and do it with such a kind and easy grace that never made you feel inadequate or demanding. An openness to people and ideas, and to look for the good in everything, just a general positive outlook on life. He encouraged us to think positively, to be optimistic, and that life generally is excellent. One of my proudest moments is when we were having a text conversation about life a few months ago, our thoughts on it and how things would be without him. I can't remember exactly what it was I said, but it was something optimistic, and he responded with, "That's my girl." Thank you, Dad, for all of this. We love you, and we'll miss you so much. Ian worked hard and played hard, loved hard. And when he eventually retired after going half-time, quarter-time, one day a week, lunchtime on Wednesday, in retirement, he inevitably kept busy and active. We'd cycle to Cambridge for coffee or around the hills at Pukimore. We initiated Touring Tuesday, a day we set aside to explore locally, maybe the murals in Hamilton or the Paroa Maritime Museum, which does exist, or up Butler's Incline on Mount Te Aroha, a punishing 400 meters at a 25-degree angle. I remember when I finally crawled to the top, he invited me to smile for a photo and got a very rude response. We had more freedom to visit Anna and family in Northland. The last hike we did was up Mount Mania with Riley and Stella in September. But he also loved just being at home, sitting together on the deck with coffee or cocktails, listening to the call and response of the tuis and ringneck doves, and in the evening doing the Guardian Weekly quick crossword, which always felt like a triumph if we completed it in one sitting. It was a privilege to be his wife. The house would be very quiet without him. Thank you.
that last video was taken during Matariki, as you might suspect. I'm just going to pause for 1 second to take a photo of all of you for Ian. So everybody take- Thank you all so much for coming today. And for those who spoke, for those who were recorded and played on video, even though Ian's not here to bring his optimism and his good cheer directly, I think we should take it as a challenge. I think in his memory to continue his legacy, to show more heart, to be more optimistic, and to do what we can to connect people. I feel like everybody here and listening on the webcast is a testament to all the people he connected in such amazing ways. I think to honor Ian, we urge each of you to think about helping each other in big and small ways, to care for others as Ian did care for us, to make people feel seen and feel special, as so many people said Ian did for them, and to act with generosity, as he and Pam and the family did their entire lives. Ian, we love you. You'll be in our hearts forever. Now, Tataka Keegan will say a karakia for Ian and for us as we go on our way. This will be featured, this will be followed by a musical piece featuring, who else? Ian Whitten. And while that's playing, we encourage you to sit in personal contemplation. And after that, we'll all head to Woodside Estate, and we invite you to come and continue to celebrate Ian's life there. Tataka.
He honore he krore ki runga he maunga rongo ki te matu te whenua he whakaaro pai ti pai marere. Tēnei te mea ti kia koe Pam, o te rā kuro koto o tamariki koutou ko te whānau, tēnā koe Ian. I was asked to get up and say a karakia, but I'm actually going to do 3 things. And excuse me for taking this liberty. My name is Te Taka. I first met Ian almost 30 years ago in an office a little bit far away, or not too far away from here, through an act of serendipity. What happened was I was a lecturer for the Māori department, and I was in my office one day, I think it was a Tuesday, and the Māori librarian came to see me because she just received this collection from the Alexander Turnbull Library. And it was quite a large collection, about 50,000, 60,000 newspaper pages. They were legacy pages, and they were all stored on microfiche. And she was really excited to bring the collection to show me, because the texts that were in the collection were very valuable, mostly Māori language texts. And she came in to show me, and she said, look, I've just received this collection. It's a beautiful collection. And I said, well, how do we look at the pages? And she said, oh, well, it's on microfiche. You have to have a microfiche reader, and then you get out your microfiche card. I don't know if people can still remember that technology. Stick it in, and then there's like about 500 pages on the one microfiche sheet, and then you've got to search through to find what you're looking for. And I'm like, well, okay, yeah, that's really good. So she left me the index. There was a little pamphlet with the index about where all these pages came from, which are the newspapers these pages come from. So that was on a Tuesday. On a Wednesday, I got a knock on my door, and it was Ian. And he came into my office. He came into my office and he said, we've got this brand new software we've just created. It's called the Greenstone software. It's about building collections. And he said, it'd be really good. It'd be really great if we could have a Māori collection to put on the software. And I said to him, I don't know where we're going to get a Māori collection from. And I was like, I remember thinking at the time, almost saying to him, what a stupid question to ask me. We were going to find something like that. And it was stupid because the whole time he was in in my office, and it wasn't all that long, explaining about the software. I was mostly like kind of not like disregarding him, but thinking, Māori we don't have collections like that. And so he left my office. He was walking down the corridor of A block, heading back up to G block. And I remember sitting back on my chair, and then I saw this pamphlet. I'm going, you're stupid. And then, yeah, chasing back after Ian, and I said, actually, just yesterday, I've heard about this collection. And the second piece of serendipity was when we approached the then chairperson of the department, because we were needing some funding to get this, to take this collection off microfiche and place it in the digital library. So we were going to hit up the computer science department for some funding. The chairperson of the computer science department was Mark Eppley. And fortunately, one of Mark Eppley's ancestors was one of the authors of one of the editors of one of the original newspapers. So he was keen to support it as well. And so that was my first meeting with Ian. And it's been a long, generous friendship that we've had since then. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to do three things. The first thing I want to do is say some words to Ian. And it's just part of something that, kind of what we do with our culture. We have an opportunity to talk to the person before we don't see them anymore. So I want to say some words to Ian first. And I want to use the language of this land. Because I have this theory, I could be wrong, but I have this theory that when you die, you can understand all languages. Because it's not so much like a mouth to an ear, it's more like a thought and a feeling to a thought and a feeling. So wairua ki te wairua. So I'm going to speak to Ian in the language of this land, mostly because it's a little bit easier for me as well to express some of the ways that I'm feeling. So that's going to be the first thing. The second thing that I want to do is recite a particular type of karakia. And this particular type of karakia is called a wairea. And the purpose of a wairea is it's a clearing of the path so that you can travel safely and cleanly and easily. And I want to clear the path for two specific reasons. The first reason is so that Ian's spirit can travel all the places that it needs to travel. And then the second reason is so that Ian's remains can travel all the places that they're meant to travel. So that's the purpose of the wairea. And then the third thing I want to do is have a closing karakia. And that's more for us, more for the living. And it's about taking us safely from where we are today. Okay. Nō reire te rangatira tēnei te mihi atu kia koe, tēnā koe. Kauki oku whakaro ki te wā tūtei, tūtaki ai tāua kia tāua, I rato I te A-block, me tērā kaupapa, te kaupapa o te newspaper, me ngā mahi katua mai I tērā rā, taino atu ki tēnei rā. He te mihi atu ki tō nui, he te mihi atu ki tō rahi, he te mihi atu ki te wairua I puta mai I tō katakata. Kei te mihi atu mō ngā āhuatanga, ngā taonga katoa, kua tukuna mai koe, ki tō whānau, ki ngā tangata katoa, I tūtaki I a koe, o tira kia hau hoki. Kore aku kupu e taia, whakaatu I te nui, puku araha kia koe I tēnei wā nō reira. I te rangatira, kakoto moi. Hoki atu ki wānginoi I o tupuna, hoki atu ki wānginoi I o atua. Me te mōhio kai roto I a koe, ko rere ki tau I tō mahi, ko rere ki a katoa tātou I a koe. Nō reira e te rangatira, moi mai. I'm not sure if you noticed, but we were a little bit late getting in here today. Sneaked in at the front just as things were beginning to start. And one of the reasons we were late is there's a heavy mist outside. I don't know if anybody noticed that today is a real heavy mist. And we live out near our mountain. And so we had to travel through the mist. So we had to slow down a bit. So it was a little bit slower, the journey coming in. So that was one of the reasons we were late. We people from the, so both myself and Ari are from Maunga Porongia, from the mountain. And we have this belief, people from the mountain have this belief that the times of the mists are a spiritual time. So we have a long tradition of a group called the Patu Paerehi. So the Patu Paerehi are a group of people based at Maunga Porongia. And one of the key times, it's a spiritual group of people, and one of the key times when they travel and it is in times of mist. So it's kind of appropriate that I have an opportunity to talk to Ian's wairua when the time of the mist is upon us. So, ka whenaitia. Wairea, wairea, wairea. Wairea te oni tapu nei. Wairea te wairua o Ian nei. Wairea te tūpaku hungarehu nei. Ka hura tau tawhito me turaki atu ki te tauhau. Ka hura tauhau me turaki atu ki te tau tawhito. Pera I te kōrepi nui I te kōrepi roa. He wāhi awa, he toi toi awa. Hara mai tama ki te ara. Ko tū ko rongo ko tamai raya I te ara. Kauraka tama e uwhia. Tuku atu tama kia tupu. He putunga ariki no mai rāno. Mai e, mai e. Mai e te tupua. Mai e te tawhito. Hara mai koe I whia. Hara mai koe I te whakaotinuku. Hara mai koe I te whakaotirangi. Tō manua, tōku manua. Pāni ka irihia, whano, whano, hara mai te toke, haumi e, hui e, pāki e. Ari and I were fortunate a couple of months ago to spend some time with Ian and Pam, and we'll treasure that for a long time. Anō reira, tēnā kōrua. At the time, I mentioned to Ian the saying that we have, and the saying works like this. He mate kei te oranga, he oranga kei te mate. So in English, he mate kei te oranga. In life, there's death. But also in death, there is life. And the death, there is life part is what I want to address now. So that's what we're doing here today. Because of Ian's death, we have life. We're all brought together, we're rekindled with all of the thoughts, the memories, the spirit of Ian, and that's massive, that's life. Nō reira, he oranga kei te mate. So what I want to do is with this final karakia is to take all of that good feeling, take all of that goodwill, take all of those memories, all of that laughter, all of the spirit that's within Ian, take it within us, absorb it within us, and take it off with us from where we travel. Later on today, for the rest of the week, for the rest of the weekend, for whenever. So that's what this final karakia is about. This final karakia is to take the spirit that's within this room, that's within us, from Ian, from everyone else, absorb it with us, and then carry it off with us. Nō reira, unuhia ki te uru tapu nui. Kia wātia, kia māma, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua, I te ara takatū. Koia rā e rongo, paka iri ake ki runga, kia tīna, tīna. Haumi e hui e, tāe ki e. Kia ora tātou.